I need to tell you about the day I came back from the dead. It was a Tuesday morning in October when I stood across the street from my own house watching my son ride his bike in circles on the driveway. He was 7 now. Last time I'd seen him, he'd just turned 5 and still needed training wheels. The bike he was riding, a red BMX with white handlebar grips, that was new. I'd missed him learning to ride it. I'd missed a lot. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, though Seattle in October isn't exactly warm. They'd been shaking on and off for 3 months, ever since I got out. The doctors at Landstuhl said it was normal, post-traumatic stress, they called it. Give it time, they said. I didn't feel like I had time. The front door opened and my wife stepped out, Sarah. Even from across the street, even after 2 years, I knew the way she moved, the way she tucked her hair behind her left ear when she was watching something carefully. She was watching our son Ethan, and smiling that same smile I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago. Then another figure stepped out behind her. Marcus, my best friend since basic training. The guy who'd been best man at our wedding, the guy who'd held Ethan in the hospital the day he was born while I was deployed in Afghanistan, the guy who put his hand on my wife's lower back like he had every right to touch her. I watched Marcus lean down and kiss Sarah's temple, watched my son pedal over to them, laughing about something, watched Marcus ruffle Ethan's hair the way I used to. The shaking in my hands got worse. 2 years. I'd spent 2 years in a hole in the ground outside Damascus, thinking about this moment, thinking about coming home, about holding my wife, about teaching my son to ride a bike. I never imagined I'd be watching someone else do it. The official story was simple. Captain Jack Morrison, U.S. Army Intelligence, missing and presumed lost during a classified operation in Syria. No remains recovered, no confirmation of status, just gone. They'd held a memorial service. I found that out later. Sarah had buried an empty coffin while I was still breathing, still fighting to stay alive in a 6-by-8-foot cell that smelled like rust and human waste. I spent the first 6 months in that cell planning my escape, spent the next year trying not to go insane. The last 6 months, I just tried to remember what Sarah's voice sounded like, what Ethan's laugh sounded like. Turns out I should have been wondering if they'd wait for me. A black Audi pulled into the driveway, Marcus's car. He'd always wanted one, talked about getting it after his next promotion. Looked like he'd gotten that promotion. Looked like he'd gotten a lot of things. Sarah called something to Ethan. He rode his bike into the garage. She and Marcus walked to the car together. His hand never left her back. They looked like a family. They looked happy. I stood there for another 20 minutes after they drove away. Just stood there on the sidewalk across from the house I'd bought 7 years ago, the house where I'd painted Ethan's nursery blue and installed those stupid decorative shutters Sarah wanted. The house that didn't feel like mine anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Andrews, my CO before the Syria op. Give yourself time. Don't do anything rash. We need to talk. I'd been back in the States for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of debriefings, medical evaluations, and psych assessments. 3 weeks of everyone telling me to take it slow, to readjust, to process. Nobody told me how to process watching your best friend living your life. I drove to a motel off I-5, the kind of place that rents by the hour but doesn't ask questions if you pay cash for the week. The room smelled like old carpet and bleach. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. I had Sarah's number memorized, could call her right now, could tell her I was alive, that I'd made it home, that I'd survived. But what would I be coming home to? My orders were classified. Deep insertion into a Syrian rebel network, posing as a defector with intelligence to sell. The mission was supposed to last 6 months. Gather intel, identify key players, get extracted. It went wrong in week 2. Someone burned me. Someone told the Syrians exactly who I was and what I was really doing there. I never figured out who. Never got the chance. They took me to a facility outside Damascus. The interrogation started immediately. They wanted to know everything. Troop movements, CIA assets, operational plans. They had questions so specific, so detailed that I knew someone on our side was feeding them information. I didn't break, couldn't break. Not because I was brave, I wasn't. I was terrified every day. But I'd been trained for this. Seer school had prepared me for the physical part. The rest was just stubbornness. And thinking about Sarah and Ethan. Thinking about coming home. The first year, I counted days by scratching marks into the concrete wall. 365 lines. Then I stopped counting. The lines seemed pointless when I couldn't see an end anymore. They moved me twice. Different cells, same questions. Sometimes they'd leave me alone for weeks. The silence was worse than the interrogations. In the silence, I could hear my own thoughts too clearly. I'd think about Ethan's 5th birthday, the one I'd missed. Wonder if Sarah had gotten him the Lego set he wanted. Wonder if he asked about me. Wonder if he remembered what I looked like. I'd think about Sarah sleeping alone in our bed, about her filing taxes as a widow, about her explaining to our son that Daddy wasn't coming home. I never thought about her moving on. That was my mistake. Before I tell you what I found in that envelope, if you're hooked on this story, hit that like button and subscribe. There are dozens more voices like mine here. And drop a comment with your country. I'm curious where all of you are listening from. The extraction happened on a Wednesday. I didn't know it was coming. One minute I was in my cell, staring at those scratches on the wall. The next, explosions, gunfire, shouting in English. A Delta team came through my door like it was made of paper. They had me out of that facility and in a helicopter before I understood what was happening. "You're going home, Captain," the team leader said. He was young, early 20s, probably wasn't even in the Army when I deployed. "You're going home." 3 days later, I was in Germany. A week after that, stateside. The doctors wanted to keep me longer. I was 40 pounds lighter than my deployment weight, with 3 broken ribs that had healed wrong and a shoulder that wouldn't rotate properly anymore. I told them I wanted to go home. Nobody mentioned Sarah. Nobody mentioned that she'd moved on. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they knew and didn't want to be the ones to tell me. Colonel Andrews finally came to see me on my 2nd week at Walter Reed. Jack, he sat in the plastic chair next to my bed. He'd aged since I last saw him. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. "How you holding up?" "I'm alive, sir." "That you are." He studied me for a long moment. Then, "You did good over there. Didn't give them anything. We know that." "How?" "We had sources. Kept tabs on the situation as best we could." "For 2 years?" He shifted in his chair. "We didn't abandon you, Captain. Never stopped working on getting you out. Just took a while." "Yeah," he rubbed his jaw. "Listen, there's something you need to know. About Sarah." My chest tightened. "I already know." "You do?" "Saw them yesterday. Her and Marcus, at the house." Andrew's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or concern. "I see. And have you talked to her yet?" "No." "Good. Don't." I sat up straighter, ignoring the pull in my ribs. "Sir?" "I'm ordering you to stay away from your family for now, at least until we can—" "You're ordering me to stay away from my wife and son?" "I'm trying to protect you, Jack." His voice was quiet. "And them." "From what?" He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot for a long moment before turning back. "There are things about your mission you don't know. Things I couldn't tell you before you deployed. Things I still can't tell you. So tell me something you can." He was quiet for another moment. Then, "Sarah knows you're alive." The words didn't make sense at first, like hearing a sentence in a foreign language you only half understand. "What?" "She's known for 3 months, since we confirmed you were alive and started planning the extraction." The room felt smaller suddenly, harder to breathe. "And she didn't—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I asked her not to contact you, for operational reasons." "What operational reasons? The operation's over. I'm out." "Jack, she knew I was alive and didn't come to see me? Didn't call? Didn't—" The shaking was back in my hands, worse now. "She's with Marcus. She knew I was coming home and she's with Marcus." Andrews moved back to the chair, sat down.
His face had that look I'd seen before. The look officers get when they're about to tell you something you don't want to hear, but need to know anyway. I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to trust me. Stay away from them for a few more days. Let me handle this. There are complications. Complications? I'll explain when I can. For now, I'm ordering you, as your commanding officer, to maintain distance from your family and Marcus. No contact. Understand? I wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but years of military conditioning don't just disappear. Yes, sir. He stood again, moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, Jack, I'm sorry. This isn't how this should have gone. None of it. After he left, I sat in that hospital room and tried to make sense of it. Sarah knew I was alive, had known for months, and she hadn't come. What kind of complications could possibly justify that?
I was discharged from Walter Reed 4 days later, against medical advice, but I signed the forms anyway. They gave me a bottle of painkillers, a referral to a VA therapist, and a list of resources for returning POWs. I rented the motel room instead. Spent 3 days there, mostly staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about Sarah and Marcus, trying not to imagine the conversations they must have had when they learned I was alive. He's coming back. What do we do? I don't know. On the 4th day, someone knocked on my door. I checked the peephole. Marcus stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, looking nervous. I almost didn't open it. My hands were shaking again, and this time it wasn't from stress, it was anger. Pure, white-hot anger that I'd been sitting on for days. But I opened the door anyway. Jack. His voice cracked on my name. Jesus, Jack, I hit him. Didn't plan it, didn't think about it, just drove my fist into his jaw hard enough to send him stumbling back into the hallway. My shoulder screamed in protest, the one that wouldn't rotate right, didn't care. Marcus caught himself on the opposite wall, touched his split lip, looked at the blood on his fingers. I deserved that, he said. You deserve worse. Probably. He stayed against the wall, didn't try to come closer. Smart. Can we talk? About what? About how you're living in my house, sleeping in my bed, raising my son? It's not like that. Really? Because from where I was standing yesterday, it looked exactly like that. He wiped the blood from his mouth. I know how it looks. I know what you must think, but there's more to this than... More to this? You moved in on my wife while I had to stop, had to breathe. The anger was making everything shake now, not just my hands. While I was in a hole in the ground being interrogated, while I was trying to stay alive so I could come home to them, you were following orders. That stopped me. What? Now here's where everything changed, but real quick, if you're invested in how this ends, I genuinely appreciate a subscription. More soldier stories drop daily. Comment your country below. Always amazes me how far these reach. Marcus stepped back into the doorway. His jaw was already swelling where I'd hit him. Can I come in, please? This isn't a conversation for the hallway. I wanted to say no, wanted to hit him again, wanted to do a lot of things, but something in his voice made me step aside. He came in, looked around the motel room, the unmade bed, the empty takeout containers, the window with the broken blinds. You've been here since you got back? Answer my question. What did you mean following orders? He sat in the single chair by the desk. I stayed standing, keeping distance between us. How much did Andrews tell you? Not enough. Figures. Marcus leaned back, winced like something hurt. Your Syria operation wasn't what you thought it was. No shit, someone burned me. I know. You know? How do you... Then it hit me, cold and sudden like ice water. You! No, he shook his head quickly. No, Jack, I didn't burn you, but I knew about it. Not before, I swear to God, not before, but after. I knew what happened to you and why. My legs felt weak suddenly. I sat on the edge of the bed. Explain. Your mission was never about the Syrian rebels. The rebels were just cover. The real objective was to identify a mole in army intelligence, someone high up who'd been selling information to hostile forces for years. A mole? Yeah,
They suspected someone in the chain of command, but they couldn't prove it, couldn't even narrow down who. So they set a trap. They sent you in with fake intelligence, different versions fed to different people. Whoever burned you would reveal which version they had access to. My mouth was dry. They used me as bait. They needed someone experienced enough to make it believable, someone with real intelligence credentials, someone who... He trailed off. Someone expendable. They didn't think you'd actually get caught. The plan was for you to make contact, stay in position for a few weeks while they monitored communications, then extract you before anything went wrong. So they left me there? They were gathering evidence, building a case. The information from monitoring who accessed what, when, how the intelligence that burned you was leaked took time to piece together.
I turned around. Who was it? Brigadier General Hartman, Deputy Director of Intelligence. He'd been selling information to the Syrians, the Russians, whoever was paying. Had been for 6 years. Hartman? I'd met him twice. Once during my initial briefing for the Syria op. He'd shaken my hand, wished me luck, told me I was doing important work for my country. The whole time, he was the one setting me up. Where is he now? Federal prison. They arrested him 8 months ago, charged him with espionage, treason, about a dozen other felonies. He'll never see the outside of a cell again. 8 months ago. The timeline clicked together in my head. That's when they started planning my extraction. Yeah, once Hartman was in custody, there was no operational reason to leave you there. Delta went in as soon as they had a viable plan. I sat back down on the bed. My shoulder was aching from where I'd punched Marcus. Everything hurt, actually. The ribs, the shoulder, the headache that had been constant since Germany. And Sarah? Where does she fit into this? Marcus looked at his hands. That's the part you're really not gonna like. Try me. 3 months before your extraction, Andrews brought Sarah into the loop, told her you were alive, told her about the operation, about Hartman, about the plan to get you out. Why tell her at all? Because they needed her cooperation for... He stopped, seemed to be choosing his words carefully, for what came next, which was... He met my eyes. They asked her to act like she'd moved on, to publicly appear to be in a relationship with someone else, to make it look like she believed you were gone and wasn't waiting for you. The words hung in the air between us. Why? Because Hartman's lawyers were preparing his defense. Part of their strategy was to argue that the intelligence suggesting he was the mole was fabricated, that the whole thing was a setup to frame him. If they could show that the operation had irregular elements, like the military keeping a soldier's survival secret from his own family, it would support their case. So they told Sarah I was alive, then asked her to pretend I wasn't. They asked her to act naturally, to live her life the way she would if she genuinely believed you were gone, and to... He paused again. To let me be seen with her and Ethan, in public, often enough that it looked like we were together. You were pretending. The whole thing was staged. Coffee shops where we knew we'd be seen, Ethan's school events, weekend trips, all of it documented by people working for Andrews to establish a timeline showing Sarah had moved on. Why you? Because I already had a relationship with your family. It would seem natural. And because... He looked away. Because I agreed to do it. I needed to hear him say it. You agreed to fake a relationship with my wife while I was in a Syrian prison. To protect the case against Hartman, to make sure he couldn't use some technicality to get off, and to protect Sarah. Protect her how? If Hartman's defense team found out she knew you were alive, they'd have called her to testify, tried to use her knowledge to prove military misconduct. This way, she could honestly say she was told you were missing and presumed lost, because that's what the official record shows. The fact that she was later informed you were alive, that was classified. Her lawyers could argue she was never legally required to make that information public. The more he explained, the more my head hurt. So this whole thing, you and Sarah, the appearances, all of it, that was Andrews' idea?
His orders, yeah. And Sarah went along with it? She didn't have much choice. It wasn't technically an order for her, but Andrews made it clear that the prosecution's case could collapse if Hartman's team found any irregularities. He told her that everything we'd put you through would be for nothing if Hartman walked. I stood up again. Needed to move. Needed to do something with the energy coursing through me. Let me get this straight. The military used me as bait to catch a mole, left me in a Syrian prison for 2 years to build their case, then asked my wife to pretend she'd moved on with my best friend while I knew I was alive, to protect that case. That's about the size of it. And you went along with this. Jack, you took her to coffee shops, to Ethan's school events. You put your hand on her back and kissed her temple and acted like you were together, all while I knew I was alive. I hated every second of it. Not enough to say no. He stood now too. You think this was easy? You think I wanted to lie to your son? To walk around pretending I was his... He stopped, breathed. I did it because Andrews convinced me it was the only way to protect Sarah and to make sure Hartman paid for what he did, to make sure you didn't spend 2 years in hell for nothing. Noble of you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know how this looks, but I need you to understand, Sarah didn't betray you, neither did I. We were both trying to protect you in the only way we could.
I wanted to believe him. Part of me did believe him, but another part, the part that had spent 2 years alone, thinking about Sarah, missing her, that part couldn't get past the image of them together, of Marcus's hand on her back, of them looking like a family. Does Ethan know? Know what? Any of it. That I'm alive, that you and Sarah aren't really together, any of it. Marcus shook his head. He still thinks you're gone. Sarah wanted to wait until you were home to tell him, wanted you to be the one to... I'm not home. I'm in a motel off I-5. You could be home. Sarah wants... What Sarah wants stopped mattering when she agreed to this, when she let you play house with my family. That's not fair. None of this is fair. The words came out louder than I meant them to. I spent 2 years in a cell thinking about her, about them. That's what kept me going. And the whole time, she knew I was alive and was pretending to be with you. You're telling me that's fair? No, it's not. None of this is fair. Not what Hartman did, not what the military did, not what we asked of Sarah. None of it. I needed to tell you what happened next. But first, if this story's got you, show some love with a like and subscribe. I read every comment, especially love seeing where you're all from around the world. He moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. Sarah wants to see you, whenever you're ready. No pressure, but she wants you to know that everything she did for you, to protect you, to make sure Hartman couldn't use your case to escape justice. Tell her I'm not ready. Jack, just tell her I need time. He nodded, opened the door, then paused. For what it's worth, the whole time we were doing this, the coffee shops, the school events, all of it, she was miserable. I'd catch her sometimes just staring at nothing, and I knew she was thinking about you, about what you'd think when you came home and saw us together. She was terrified you'd never forgive her. Looks like she was right to be terrified. He left without another word. I spent the rest of the day in that motel room, trying to process everything Marcus had told me, trying to separate what I felt from what I knew, trying to figure out if knowing the truth made any of this better or worse. The truth was supposed to set you free. All it did was give me new things to be angry about. 2 days later, Colonel Andrews called. Marcus said you two talked. Yeah. And? And what, sir? You want me to say I understand? That I'm okay with being used as bait and left in a Syrian prison while my wife pretended to be with someone else? You want me to know that none of this was personal. It was operational necessity. Operational necessity. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you're calling it? Hartman needed to be stopped. He'd cost us lives, Jack. Operations blown, assets compromised. Good people got hurt because of the intelligence he sold. So you sacrificed me instead. We did what we had to do to catch him,
And yes, that meant putting you in danger. It meant making choices that I'm not proud of. But Hartman's going to spend the rest of his life in prison because of those choices. Congratulations. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less official, more human. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Sarah, she's been through hell too. Different hell than yours, but hell nonetheless. She deserves a chance to explain herself. Marcus already explained. Not the same thing. You need to hear it from her. I'm not ready. When will you be? I didn't have an answer to that. Andrew sighed. Take the time you need, but don't take too long. That boy deserves to know his father's alive. He was right about that, at least. Ethan deserved better than this. Deserved better than a dead father coming back to life and hiding in a motel. That night, I drove back to the house, parked across the street like before, watched the lights in the windows, the TV flickering in the living room, shadows moving behind the curtains. I sat there for an hour trying to work up the courage to cross the street, to knock on the door, to face whatever was waiting for me inside. But I couldn't do it. I drove back to the motel instead. This went on for a week. Drive to the house, sit across the street, watch my family through the windows, drive away. A pattern, a routine, something to focus on besides the anger and confusion churning in my gut. On the 8th night, Sarah came out. She must have seen my car, must have been watching for it. She walked across the street, wrapped in a cardigan against the October cold, and knocked on my window. I could have driven away, should have probably, but I didn't. I rolled down the window. "Hi," she said. 2 years. 2 years since I'd heard her voice. It sounded the same, different. I couldn't tell which. "Hi. Can we talk? Here? In the car or inside? Wherever you're comfortable." I unlocked the passenger door. She got in. Brought the smell of her shampoo with her, the same kind she'd always used. Coconut and vanilla. We sat there in silence for a long moment, both of us staring straight ahead through the windshield. "Marcus told me, you know," she said finally, "about the arrangement, about what Andrews asked us to do." "Yeah. I'm sorry." "For what? Following orders?" "For not fighting harder against it, for not telling Andrews to find another way, for—" her voice cracked, "for not coming to see you the second I found out you were alive." "Why didn't you?" "Because Andrews said it could compromise the case against Hartman. Said Hartman's lawyers would subpoena me, would use my knowledge to argue military misconduct. Said the whole prosecution could collapse and Hartman could walk, and I couldn't let that happen, not after everything you went through because of him." "So you let Marcus pretend to be me instead?" She turned to look at me then. Her eyes were red. Had been crying recently by the look of it. "It was never like that. Marcus and I, we were never together. Not really. It was all for show. Coffee shops where we knew people would see us, school events. We kept it public, kept it innocent. We had to make it look real without crossing lines we couldn't uncross." "Did Ethan think it was real?" She looked away. "I don't know. He's 7. He liked having Marcus around. Marcus is good with him. But I don't think he understood what it meant, what people must have thought it meant." "What about you? Did you think about what I'd think?" "Every single day." The tears came then. "Every day I woke up and went through the motions and pretended everything was fine. I thought about you, about what you'd say when you came home, about whether you'd ever forgive me." "I don't know if I can." She nodded, like she'd expected that. "I understand." "Do you? Do you understand what it was like to spend 2 years in a cell, holding on to the thought of coming home to you, and then to come home and see you with him? To watch through a window while another man lived my life?" "No, I don't understand that. I can't. Just like you can't understand what it was like to believe you were gone, to plan a funeral for you, to explain to our 5-year-old son that Daddy wasn't coming home, to learn to live without you, and then to find out you were alive and be told I couldn't see you, couldn't tell anyone,
had to keep pretending you were gone while knowing you were out there somewhere, suffering. Her hands were shaking now, like mine had been. I thought about you every day, too, she continued. Wondered if you were okay, if you were being treated well, if you thought about us, if you blamed me for not knowing, for not somehow sensing that you were still out there. And then, when Andrews told me you were alive, God, Jack, I wanted to run to you, wanted to get on the first plane to Germany and just hold you. But they said I couldn't, said it would ruin everything, and I believed them because I was so desperate for your sacrifice to mean something. We sat there in the silence that followed, both of us crying now, both of us broken in different ways. What do we do? I asked finally. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way back from this. I don't know if we can fix what's been broken. But you want to try? She looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time since I came back. I spent 2 years mourning you, 2 years learning to live without you. And when I found out you were alive, I realized I'd never actually let you go. I was just existing, going through motions, waiting without knowing I was waiting. That's not an answer. Yes, she said. I want to try, if you do, but I understand if you can't. I wanted to say yes, wanted to tell her we could fix this, could go back to how things were. But I couldn't, because things weren't how they were. We weren't who we'd been. I need more time. She nodded, wiped her eyes, reached for the door handle. Sarah? She stopped. I need to see him, Ethan. He needs to know I'm alive. When you're ready, whenever you're ready, just tell me. I'll make sure he's home. She got out of the car, walked back across the street, disappeared into the house that used to be mine. I sat there for another hour before driving back to the motel. 3 days later, I went to see Colonel Andrews at his office at Joint Base Lewis and McChord. I need to understand something, I told him. Why me? There must have been other intelligence officers you could have used for this, other people you could have sent to Syria.
Andrews leaned back in his chair, gestured for me to sit. I stayed standing. You want the truth? I think I've earned it. You were good, one of the best intelligence officers I'd seen. You had the background, the skills, the psychological profile for a deep cover operation. And, he paused, you had the personal situation we needed. The personal situation. A wife and young child, strong family ties. It made you sympathetic, made the idea of you as a defector more believable to the Syrians. You'd be someone who had something to gain by selling out his country, money for your family. The room felt cold suddenly. You chose me because I had a family? I chose you because you were qualified and because the details of your life fit the cover we needed. Yes. And the fact that those details, my family, would be the thing I'd hold on to while being interrogated, that didn't factor into your decision? He met my eyes, didn't look away. It factored in. We knew you'd resist interrogation better because you had something to protect, something to get home to. So you used my family to bait Hartman and to keep me from breaking under interrogation? We used every advantage we had to complete the mission. That's war, Captain. This wasn't war. This was... I had to stop, breathe. The anger was back, hot and sharp in my chest. This was using people, using me, using Sarah and Ethan like chess pieces. Yes. He didn't flinch, didn't apologize. It was, and I'd do it again if I had to, because Hartman was responsible for the loss of 18 American lives, 18 soldiers who didn't come home because he sold their positions, their routes, their operations. I made a choice to stop him. That choice cost you 2 years of your life, cost your family 2 years of suffering. I own that. You own it? I do, and I'll carry it for the rest of my life. But I won't apologize for stopping a traitor who is getting our people hurt. I wanted to hit him, wanted to rage, wanted to make him feel even a fraction of what I'd felt in that cell. But he was right. I hated that he was right.
Hartman had cost lives, real lives, soldiers with families of their own. And if using me as bait was what it took to stop him, I still hated it, but I understood it. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you decide what kind of life you want. You've got full disability benefits if you want them, medical retirement with honors, or you can stay in, desk job, training position, whatever suits you. Your choice." "And my family?" "That's your choice too. But Jack," he stood, came around the desk, "don't waste what you came home to. Don't let what Hartman did, what I did, take more from you than it already has." I left his office with more questions than answers, but at least I understood now. Understood the machine that had used me, understood why. Understanding didn't make it hurt less, but it was something. That night I called Sarah. "I want to see him, tomorrow if that works." "Tomorrow works. Come for dinner, 6 o'clock. "Sarah, does he know that I'm alive?" "No. I wanted you to be there when we told him, wanted him to see you, not just hear about you." "Okay." "Sarah, are you going to stay? After dinner, I mean? Or?" "I don't know. One step at a time." "One step at a time," she echoed. "See you tomorrow." I hung up, stared at the motel room ceiling, tried to imagine what I'd say to my son. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that his father came back from the dead? How do you make that make sense? I didn't sleep that night, just lay there, watching the hours tick by on the digital clock by the bed, thinking about Ethan's face, wondering if he'd even recognize me. At 5:30 the next evening, I stood on my own front porch, my hand raised to knock, trying to remember how to breathe. The door opened before I could. Sarah stood there. She'd dressed up, not fancy, but nice. The blue sweater I'd always liked, hair down instead of in the ponytail she usually wore around the house. "Hi." "Hi." "He's in the living room, playing with his Legos. Does he know I'm coming?" "I told him we had a visitor for dinner, someone special. He thinks it's his uncle from Portland." "Okay." She stepped aside, let me in. The house smelled the same, that specific combination of Sarah's cooking and the lavender plug-in she kept in the hallway, and something else I couldn't name. Home. It smelled like home. I could hear Ethan in the living room, the sound of plastic bricks clicking together, the quiet narration he always did when he played, voices for different characters, sound effects for crashes and explosions. Sarah touched my arm. "You ready?" "No. Me neither. But let's do it anyway." We walked into the living room together. Ethan looked up from his Lego creation, some kind of spaceship by the look of it, saw me, frowned. "Who's that?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Sarah knelt down beside him. "Ethan, honey, this is someone we need to talk about." "Is this Uncle Mike?" "No, baby, this is..." She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet again. "This is your daddy." Ethan looked at me, then at Sarah, then back at me. "Daddy's gone. You said he's not coming back." "I thought he wasn't." Sarah's voice shook. "But I was wrong. He did come back. He came back to us." Ethan stood up slowly, stared at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was. "You're my dad?" I knelt down, got to his eye level. My voice came out rough, barely more than a whisper. "Yeah, buddy, I'm your dad." "But you were gone." I was very far away, but I came back. I came back because I missed you so much." He took a step closer, reached out, touched my face like he was checking if I was real. "You look different. You're skinny." I laughed, couldn't help it. Yeah, I am." "And you have a beard." "I do." "I don't remember you with a beard." "I didn't have one before, but I do now." He studied me for a long moment. I could see him thinking, processing, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. Then he threw his arms around my neck. I held him, held my son for the first time in 2 years. He was bigger now, taller, heavier, but he still fit against my chest the same way.
still smelled like kid shampoo and outside, and something uniquely Ethan. I looked up at Sarah. She was crying. So was I. We stayed like that for a long time, the three of us in the living room, not talking, just being together. Eventually, Ethan pulled back. "Are you staying now? Are you staying here with us?" I looked at Sarah. She looked back. The question hung between us. I don't know yet, buddy, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere far away again, okay? Okay. He seemed satisfied with that. Kids are resilient that way, adaptable. "Do you want to see my Legos? I built a whole space station." "I'd love to see it." He grabbed my hand, pulled me toward his creation, started explaining every piece, every detail, every imaginary story he'd built around it. Sarah watched from the doorway, wiping her eyes. We had dinner together. Ethan talked non-stop about school, about his friends, about the bike Marcus had taught him to ride. That one stung, but I pushed through it. After dinner, Ethan asked if I'd put him to bed. Sarah nodded, and I followed him upstairs to his room. The walls were covered in posters I didn't recognize, superheroes I didn't know. He'd grown up without me. I read him a story, his choice, some book about dragons I'd never seen before. Tucked him in, kissed his forehead. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy." "Are you mad at Mom?" "Why would you ask that?" "I don't know. You both seem sad." Smart kid. Too smart. "I'm not mad. We're just figuring some things out. Grown-up stuff." "Okay," he yawned. "I'm glad you came back." "Me too, buddy. Me too." When I came back downstairs, Sarah was in the kitchen washing dishes. I stood in the doorway watching her for a moment. "He's asleep. Thank you for being here tonight, for being so good with him. He's my son." "I know, but after everything, I wouldn't have blamed you if you couldn't do this." "I've been thinking about what you said, about trying." She stopped washing, stood very still. "And? I don't know if I can forgive you yet, or Marcus, or Andrews, or any of this. I don't know if I can look at you without seeing you with him, without thinking about the 2 years I spent holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. Check. But," I set down the dish I'd been drying, "I also don't know if I can walk away, from you, from him, from the life we had. And I think I need to try, for Ethan if nothing else." "Just for Ethan?" "Mostly for Ethan, but also—" I had to stop, breathe, say the thing I'd been avoiding saying. "Also because I still love you. And I hate that I do. I hate that after everything I can't just turn that off. But I can't." She moved closer, stopped a foot away, close enough to touch, but not touching. "I never stopped loving you, not for a second, not even when I thought you were gone. I learned to live with the loss, but I never stopped." "How do we do this? How do we move forward from here?" "Slowly, carefully, one day at a time. I might not be able to stay here, in this house. Not yet. I understand. But I want to be around for Ethan and to see if we can find our way back. That's all I'm asking for, a chance." We stood there in the kitchen, dishes half done, both of us crying quietly. "I should go," I said finally. I need time to process all of this." "Okay." I moved toward the door. She followed. At the threshold, I stopped. "Sarah, thank you, tonight, for letting me see him." "You don't have to thank me for that. He's your son, too." I left, got in my car, sat in the driveway for a long moment before driving away. Behind me, I could see Sarah silhouetted in the doorway, watching me go. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. I'd come over for dinner 3 or 4 times a week, play with Ethan, read him stories. Sarah and I would talk, careful conversations about safe topics. The weather, Ethan's school, bills that needed paying. We avoided the big things. The Syria mission, Marcus, the 2 years of loss and lies. Those topics sat between us like landmines. One wrong step and everything would explode. Marcus stopped coming around. Sarah said they'd talked, that he understood, that he'd done his part, and now he was stepping back. I didn't ask for details. Wasn't ready for that conversation yet. I moved out of the motel, got a small apartment closer to the house, furnished it with the bare minimum: a bed, a table, a couch. It didn't feel like home, but it was better than the motel. The VA therapist I'd been assigned said I was making progress, said the nightmares would fade with time, said the anger and confusion were normal, said a lot of things that sounded good in her office but felt hollow at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. One night, about 6 weeks after I'd come home, Sarah called. "Can you come over? Not for dinner, just, can you come?" I was there in 15 minutes. She was sitting on the porch steps when I pulled up. Even in the dark, I could see she'd been crying. "What's wrong? Is Ethan okay?" "He's fine. He's asleep. This isn't about him." I sat down beside her. "Then what?" "I can't do this anymore." My chest tightened. "Do what?" "This. Pretending everything's fine? Having these careful conversations about nothing? Dancing around everything that actually matters?" "Sarah, I need to tell you something, and you're going to hate me for it, but I can't keep it inside anymore." "What?" She turned to look at me. "When Andrews told me you were alive, he also told me about the mission, about Hartman, about why you'd been left there for so long, and he asked me to cooperate with the plan to make it look like I had moved on." "I know. Marcus told me." "But what Marcus didn't tell you, what I didn't tell you, is that I had a choice. Andrews gave me a choice. He said I could refuse, said they'd find another way to protect the case if I wasn't comfortable with the arrangement." The words settled over me like snow, cold and quiet and suffocating. "You had a choice." I had a choice, and I chose to go along with it. I chose to let Marcus pretend to be with me instead of fighting for another option. I told myself it was for the case, for justice, for you. But the truth is, she stopped, breathed. The truth is that part of me was angry at you. Angry at me? For leaving, for taking that mission, for putting yourself in danger and leaving me alone to raise our son. I know that's not fair. I know you were following orders. But when Andrews told me you'd been used as bait, that they knowingly put you in danger, I was so angry at them, at you, at the whole situation. So you punished me. No, not punish, but I didn't fight as hard as I should have. I could have refused, could have demanded they find another way, but I didn't. I told myself it was the right thing to do for the case, but really, I was just tired. Tired of waiting, tired of being alone, tired of being strong for Ethan when I was falling apart inside. I stood up, needed distance, needed to move. So this whole time, while I've been trying to forgive you for something you were ordered to do, it was actually something you chose to do. Yes. And Marcus, did he know you had a choice? No, I told him Andrews had ordered it. He thought I was as trapped as he was. I walked to the edge of the yard, stared at the street, the same street where I'd parked and watched my family from a distance, the same street I'd driven down 1,000 times before Syria. Everything looked the same. Everything was different. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve the truth, all of it. Because I can't build anything real with you on a foundation of half-truths and omissions, and because... Her voice broke. Because I need you to know who I really am. Not the person you thought you were coming home to. The person I actually became while you were gone. I turned around. She was still sitting on the steps, arms wrapped around herself. Who's that? Someone who's not as strong as you thought. Someone who made a selfish choice when she should have fought harder. Someone who... She wiped her eyes. Someone who needs you to know the worst of her before you decide if you can stay. Before I tell you what I decided, if you're hooked on this story, hit that like button and subscribe. There are dozens more voices like mine here.
and drop a comment with your country. I'm curious where all of you were listening from. I walked back to the steps, sat down beside her. You want to know what I thought about in that cell?
She looked at me. I thought about all the ways I'd failed you, all the times I'd chosen the mission over family dinners, all the deployments I'd volunteered for, all the times I'd come home and been too tired or too distant to really be present. I thought about how I'd taken you for granted, assumed you'd always be there, always be waiting, always be the Sarah I'd left behind. Jack, I'm not finished. I thought about those things, and I told myself that if I ever got home, I'd be different. I'd be the husband and father I should have been. I'd put you first. I'd make up for all the lost time. I turned to look at her. But the truth is, I don't know if I could have. Because the person I was before Syria, he was a soldier first. He loved you and Ethan, but the mission always came first. Always. And maybe if I'd survived and come home the normal way, I would have slipped right back into those same patterns. You don't know that, don't I? How many times did I miss Ethan's bedtime because of late briefings? How many anniversaries did I forget because I was focused on the next deployment? She was quiet. My point is, we both became different people. You became someone who had to make impossible choices alone. I became someone who learned what it really means to lose everything. We're not the people we were. And maybe, I had to pause. This was the hardest part. Maybe trying to go back to what we had is the wrong goal. What's the right goal? I don't know. Maybe figuring out who we are now and whether those people can build something new together. She leaned against me. I put my arm around her. We sat there on the porch steps, two broken people trying to figure out how to heal. I'm sorry, she said finally, for making that choice, for not fighting harder, for all of it. I'm sorry too, for leaving, for the person I was before, for expecting you to be frozen in time while I was gone. Where do we go from here? I don't know. But I think I need to move back in, not to pretend everything's fine, but to be here with you and Ethan, to figure out who we can be together. Are you sure? No, but I'm sure that I don't want to lose more time. I've already lost 2 years. I don't want to lose any more. She kissed me then, soft and tentative, like a first kiss, like we were starting over. Maybe we were. I moved back in the next week, back into my house, my bedroom, my life. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I'd wake up from nightmares and forget where I was. Nights when Sarah would cry quietly in the bathroom, thinking I couldn't hear. Days when we'd snap at each other over nothing because the real things were too big to talk about yet. But there were good moments too. Ethan's laughter at breakfast, the way Sarah's hand would find mine while we watched TV, the slow rebuilding of routines and rhythms. One Saturday, Marcus called. I heard you moved back in. Yeah. How's it going? Honestly, it's hard, but we're trying. That's good. I'm glad. There was a long pause. Marcus? Thank you. For what? For taking care of them while I couldn't. I know it was an assignment. I know it was complicated, but you kept them safe. You were there for Ethan, and I needed to say thank you for that. His voice was thick when he answered. You would have done the same for me. Yeah, I would have. You guys gonna be okay? I think so. Eventually. Maybe not the way we were, but okay in a new way. That's all anyone can ask for. After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time, thinking about loyalty and betrayal and all the shades of gray in between. Marcus had done what he thought was right. So had Sarah. So had Andrews. So had I. We'd all made choices. Some good, some bad. Most somewhere in between. That was the thing about war. Really, life. Nothing was ever as simple as right or wrong. It was all just people making choices with incomplete information and hoping they didn't destroy everything in the process. 3 months after I moved back in, Sarah and I were in the kitchen doing dishes again. Our old routine rediscovered. I've been thinking, she said, about what you said, about being different people now. Yeah? Because before we took each other for granted, assumed we had forever. Now we know how fragile it all is.
how fast it can be taken away, and maybe that makes us appreciate it more. I dried the plate in my hands, set it in the cupboard. Or maybe it makes us too afraid to relax, too worried about the next thing that could go wrong. Maybe both. She turned to look at me. But I'd rather have this, the fear and the gratitude and the complexity, than not have you at all. Even with everything that happened, everything we lost, even with all of that.
I pulled her close, held her there in the kitchen, dish towels still in my hand, water dripping on the floor. "I love you," I said, the first time I'd said it since coming home. "I love you too." She pulled back just enough to look at my face. "Are we going to make it?" "I don't know, but I'm willing to try if you are." "I am." That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time since Syria. 6 months later, I was in the backyard with Ethan, teaching him to throw a football. Sarah was inside making dinner. The early spring sun was warm on my face. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy?" "I'm glad you came back." "Me too." "Even though it's different now?" "Smart kid. Always had been. Especially because it's different now." He thought about that while lining up another throw. "Marcus asked if I wanted to go to a Mariners game next week. Can I go?" The name still stung a little, probably always would, but it stung less than it used to. "Of course you can. Marcus is your friend." "Is he your friend too?" "Yeah, he is. Even after everything. Some friendships survive the hard stuff. The good ones do, anyway." He threw the ball. I caught it, threw it back. We stood there in the fading light, father and son, rebuilding what had been broken. Inside the house, Sarah was singing along to the radio, off-key like always. The sound of it made me smile. This wasn't the life I'd imagined coming home to. It was harder, more complicated, filled with more pain and doubt than I expected. But it was real, and it was mine, and I was here to live it. That had to be enough. 2 years later, on a Tuesday morning in October, I stood in that same backyard. Ethan was 9 now, playing with the neighbor kids. Sarah was at work. She'd gone back to teaching part-time. I was installing a new fence. The old one had rotted through. Some things you just have to rebuild from scratch. My phone rang. Colonel Andrews. "Jack, how are you?" "Good, sir. How can I help you?" "I wanted to let you know, Hartman's appeal was denied. Final decision came down this morning. He's going to serve his full sentence. No possibility of parole." I sat down on the back steps, the same steps where Sarah had told me her truth all those months ago. "That's good news." "It is. Justice served, thanks in part to your sacrifice." "Sir, was it worth it? All of it. The mission, the capture, everything that came after. Was it worth the cost?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that. I didn't pay the price you did. But if you had to do it again, knowing what you know now?" Another pause. "I'd like to think I'd find another way. But honestly, probably. Probably I'd make the same choices. Because 18 families got justice. Because Hartman will never hurt another soldier. And because sometimes the mission requires sacrifices that shouldn't be asked, but are necessary anyway." "That's what I thought you'd say." "Does that help?" "No, but I didn't expect it to." After we hung up, I sat there on the steps, watching Ethan play, thinking about sacrifice and choice and the price we pay for the things we believe in. I'd lost 2 years of my life, lost the family I'd had, lost the person I'd been. But I'd gained things too, a deeper understanding of what mattered, a more honest relationship with my wife, a chance to be the father I should have been from the start. Was it worth it? I still didn't know. Maybe I never would. Sarah came home an hour later, found me still sitting on the steps, watching the kids. "You okay?" "Andrews called. Hartman's appeal was denied." She sat down beside me. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Relieved, I guess, but also, I don't know. It doesn't change anything. Doesn't give me back those 2 years. No, it doesn't. We sat in silence for a moment. Do you regret it? She asked. The mission, coming back to this, all of it. I thought about that. Really thought about it. I regret the pain. Regret what we lost. Regret that Ethan had to grow up thinking his father was gone. But the life we have now? I looked at her. I don't regret this, what we've built from the broken pieces. Even though it's not what you came home expecting? Especially because it's not what I expected. What I expected was a fantasy. This is real. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I love you. I love you too. Ethan ran over, grass-stained and grinning. Dad, can we order pizza for dinner, please? Your mom's call. Sarah smiled. Pizza it is. He whooped and ran back to his friends. I watched him go, this boy who barely remembered a time when I wasn't here, who had adapted to my return like it was the most natural thing in the world, who'd forgiven me for leaving without even knowing there was anything to forgive. Kids are resilient that way. Maybe adults could learn something from that. That night, after Ethan was asleep and the dishes were done, Sarah and I sat on the couch, not watching TV, just sitting together. I've been thinking about something, she said. What's that? About starting over, really starting over, selling this house, moving somewhere new, starting fresh without all the memories. I considered it. The idea of leaving this house, this neighborhood, this life we'd rebuilt? No. No? This house has bad memories, you're right about that, but it has good ones too, and the ones we're making now, those are worth keeping. I don't want to run from what happened, I want to build on top of it. She nodded slowly. Okay, then we stay. We stay. She curled up against me. Thank you. For what? For coming back, for fighting to stay, for building this with me even when it would have been easier to walk away. You did the same thing. We both did. We sat there in the quiet of our living room, two people who'd been broken and were slowly healing, two people who'd lost everything and found something new in the wreckage. It wasn't the happy ending I'd imagined in that Syrian cell. It was better. Because it was real, messy and complicated and imperfect and real. And real was enough.